Hey everyone, welcome to the Suffolk Legal Innovation and Technology Lab's document assembly line workshops. Today's topic is the assembly line's AI-assisted translation workflow, and our expert guest is Quinten Steenhuis, who built it. I'll ask him to introduce himself in a minute. First, this workshop is being recorded, and we will share it on our YouTube channel. You'll be able to find it on our blog at suffolklitlab.org or on YouTube by searching for Suffolk Lit Lab. If you are participating live on Zoom, please use the chat to ask questions. I'll call attention to them as we go. Your video is disabled, but since it often helps to share a screen to demonstrate a problem, if we do that today, you can do that. Just please wait till we invite you to. If you're hearing about the Lit Lab or the document assembly line for the first time, hi, head on over to the suffolklitlab.org to learn more. All right, let's get started. Quinten, go ahead and introduce yourself, and you can take it from there.
Hi, everybody. Sam gave me a great introduction, so I won't repeat myself. I am the technical director, I guess, of the document assembly line project, where we do lots of guided interviews that we translate. And so today I just want to walk you through what it's like step to finish to actually implement the translation. This is doing double duty for us because we want to train volunteers to be able to do this task. I did not do a ton of preparation, though I've done this many times. So you're going to get to see it really raw and unfiltered, I guess. Hopefully that's helpful, and we'll probably polish this up and do more with the recording. So I'm going to just give you as like a starting point, what we're going to do really is pretty well covered in documentation that we've already built and released. This is going to be a supplement to that. And I'm thinking, hopefully, everything here is ready for me to share. All right, close anything. Oops. All right, so if you go to our assembly line documentation page, you'll see that there is a section under assembly line that is called translating your interview. And this really does cover most of the things that you need to know about translation. We're just going to put them all together step by step here. And we'll actually refer to this because there's some nice little parts we can copy and paste right into our interview as well. So what I'm going to do is we have our affidavit of indigency interview. I'll use the playground for all of this for you so that it's a bit easier to see what's happening. We're going to simulate the process of going through and creating a translation using our AI translation feature, which is very new. It's only a couple months old. And you have the ability to choose, I think either Google Gemini or OpenAI, but we'll take a look at it and confirm that as the engine. And you can certainly choose the performance of the model that you use for it. So that's the way we're going to simulate it. A really important part of doing a translation with AI is that you have a human review it. We have a lovely volunteer of ours who's based in South America who has already reviewed one of our Spanish language translations for us. So I'm going to use that as my pre-baked cake. Don't skip that step because AI makes mistakes and it will have weird inconsistencies with terms maybe from screen to screen that you don't want to have in your final product. It's important to have a human review the output every time. Okay, so I'm going to start here in the playground. I'm going to go to our dashboard. That's where the AI translation feature lives. And I'm going to go to the Prepare Translation Files dashboard. I can choose which file to translate in two different ways. If I click the little drop-down arrow, it'll show me all of the interviews that are available for me to see if I go to available interviews on the server, right? This little list page. So you're going to see these line up. This drop-down lines up with this. You can also put the full path to any interview that exists anywhere on your server. And the way to kind of get that URL, an easy way to do that would be just click the run button from the playground, for example. If you want to translate an interview that you haven't yet published in a permanent link on your server, and you can copy this part of the URL, everything after the I equals and before the pound symbol, and put that into the translation support tool. This is
So,
a comment box.
quick question: the interviews
Yeah,
have to be installed. The interviews packages have to be installed on the server, not just in your playground, right?
they can be in your playground. They do not
Oh,
need to
okay,
be installed.
gotcha,
If they're on your server and not installed, you just need to get the link to them.
gotcha.
How docassemble knows to find that file on the server. So this is the way you do it. This is what it looks like for a playground interview. It has, docassemble.playground and my playground number, project name, and then the YAML file path. So what we do here next is we put in a language code. You can put in multiple. That's one of the nice things about our translation tool. Often we're translating into multiple languages at once. This just helps you by letting you generate those files in one go. Let's just pick, oh, well, I could do a couple languages here. I could do Spanish and Chinese, let's say. And this is the new feature here, the include a draft translation with GPT or Google Translate. I think it actually just uses, I can't remember if it actually does use Google Translate or not. I think we found pretty good results with just using Nano from our human volunteer. That's the cheapest. It's very, very cheap. It's like 40 cents per million tokens or something like that. Which means that most of your translations are going to be under $1. Well under $1. I think typically we're like 30,000 words is a pretty big interview. So you're going to be fractions of a penny. If you jump up to mini, I think it's like $2 instead of 40 cents. So like maybe, like 8 times bigger. And then the normal version of GPT 4.1, I think we're still using here, not the GPT-5 series, is even more expensive. We have not found a significant quality difference between any of these tiers yet. We're going to keep doing more experimenting and we might have more to report on that. But for now, you're going to get pretty good with results with any of those. You do have this option to give it extra context. So let's say that you want to, you think the translation system gets your terms to translate one row at a time, one little bit of text in the interview file at a time. So if you think it needs more context to do a good job of translating it, include a little bit of explanation here. So we could say, this is a demand letter for Massachusetts consumers. And that might help it choose the right word in context some of the time. You can just experiment with it and see what you think.
But Dean, a
Similarly,
quick question
go
from
ahead.
from
Yeah,
Matt. Matt's asking if he wanted to run it on his own server, he'd have to set up those LLMs, right?
correct. You just need to put
Yeah.
an API key for OpenAI. I think it really does require that to work.
Okay.
And then something that is probably a little bit more common than needing to customize this context. I haven't actually even tested to see, does this help with real translations that I've tried yet? It just seemed like it could help. This is probably something you are going to want some of the time. So for example, depending on where you are in the country, if you're translating into Spanish, you might prefer different dialects of Spanish based on the folks that live around you. And there can be very important differences between different phrasings in different areas of South America, for example, and certainly between continental Europe and South America and Central America and North America, the populations that speak Spanish, right? These are all different words like landlord. Propietario might be used in one part of the country and then dueño in another one. I think there's like 5 or 6 different words for landlord alone that I've seen used in different dialects. You could do that here by saying like landlord. I don't have a little enye on my keyboard, and then I just put dueño there. And it's gonna it should tell the LLM to just always use that language pair. So very simple way to do something that people who have more sophisticated translation memory banks might do for you otherwise, but it is a little way to help control the translation with the AI. For this, let's just go through we're not going to put in that extra context. We're just going to just show you what it looks like so you can see what the output looks like from this tool. For future volunteers, I guess we skipped pretty quickly over like, how do I get that file to run? So it has to be somewhere on the server. So if you've been asked to translate an interview from GitHub, you can easily, a way to do that is without having to worry about, is this already here or not? You could pull it into your playground from folders and packages from GitHub, and then click the run button, and then copy that part of the package name like I just showed. And you'll be able to, that'll be all that you need to get. So yeah, just put in a GitHub URL. I won't actually do that here. Once you get back into your playground, pretend I put a GitHub URL here. The rest is going to look the same. This is going to take me back to the screen. I click back. I run. And I'll just slow down again so this is in the recording. I'm looking at the URL bar here. I start after the equal sign. I select everything from docassemble all the way up to the pound symbol. And that is what I put into that drop-down list for the package name. So this is an easy way, just so it'll always work. You don't have to worry about, is this package installed on the server or not? It'll always work to get the right files pointed to the translation tool. Okay. The other thing that I guess I probably went over a little quickly there, you might or might not be familiar with those two-letter language codes. Those come from an ISO standard. And I believe that might be mentioned here. Yeah. ISO 639-1 alpha 2. So you Google that and you're like, what the heck is the language code that I should use for Haitian Creole? I think it's KEA. No, it's just HAT. What is KEA? Or HT? We're going to try to use the set one when we can. These are the ones that are going to probably work right away with the AI translation. But what is KEA? Can't remember. Oh, well, popped in my head, but maybe I made that one up. So you can see, like, you can convert the English language version of that language name, but also on this page that I went to, it's the first result for that. It's Wikipedia. It has the native language or endonym for that language name too. This does take a little bit of time to run. It's going to give us this output. While this is running, I am going to, because it is putting each term in the interview through the translation system like one at a time. So it takes a while to do. And I chose 2 languages, so that probably makes it a little bit longer. And I wouldn't have thought the 93A was that bad, but maybe it's translating other background terms from the assembly line that take more time. So let me go ahead and pull up the interview I wanted to actually load the translation for, which was our indigency affidavit, what other people would more normally call a fee waiver. I'm going to make a new playground project for this. And hopefully we can go through all the steps to actually get the translation working. All right, let's check on this. Not done yet. It's worth showing you what that looks like. But it's okay that it's not there yet. All right, so I'm going to go now to my sources folder. Interview translation files go into the sources folder. I'm going to load in the, let's see, translation file that we got back from our volunteer. And if you've never seen a translation file before, we have these columns here that I'll show you briefly. You can see here, a DocAssemble interview is made of multiple files. All of our interviews include the assembly line packages first. So you can see in column A, like, well, what package did it actually come from? It'll try to show you everything because you need all the included files to be able to run it. So those will all be in your translation file. They're not going to get retranslated. If they're already translated upstream, like we try to keep our basic assembly line interviews translated into multiple languages. Usually you shouldn't have to retranslate those phrases, but there's some that obviously did get in here. What our translation draft does is it then, original text is really the most important thing here. You're going to see the English version in most cases. That's what you're going to translate from. So this column is the English version. And then you just type in the translated text into column H here. Our draft translation tool will highlight everything in yellow that needs to be reviewed because it isn't been like corrected by a human yet. So this has been left that way by our reviewer, which is totally fine. And you'll see if you keep going down, there should be, well, it's fine. I guess he's deleted those rows, but you should see the rows that are already translated. We'll just keep this default blue color. Maybe it's actually going to be white. He might have done that to make it easier to read. Those things are fine. It doesn't really matter. The colors, the syntax highlighting you see here, the green, this dark blue, those are to help you. And you'll see when the translation finishes running how that syntax highlighting can give you an idea for pricing when you talk to a translator. I have found when I'm getting a quote from a translator, the translator that I tend to use, who I won't name here because it's really not a sales pitch for them. They just have worked well for me before with DocAssemble interviews. They charge about half of their regular rate to do a review. And they do want to know if you're using AI for the draft or not. And they might charge a little bit more in that case because the chances are, right, it wasn't a person who did it. They might not have been as thoughtful about the overall accuracy of what they do. I will say, though, AI translation starts out much better than using Google Translate does. It has much more context out of the box. All right. So this is the interview file here that we need to run, but I actually would like this to be to be translated regardless of whether someone's starting from that point or they're including this in another interview, because there's some nesting that happens, right? The fee waiver is part of a lot of processes. You want to be able to translate it regardless of whether you're using, you don't want to have to use a standalone interview for that. You want to be able to do it in one go, in one series of questions. So let's see here. We have this complete example, which is what I'm going to really follow for the most part. So you can see here the very first part of our YAML file, where we're going to reference our translation, is going to be in the very first set of lines. And we just list it there at the top. If you make a mistake and forget this, which I've done before, and put it like after my includes, the translation doesn't apply to these files. And you'll only see like a few things translated, and you'll be very confused. I have done that many times. I don't really remember why that works that way in DocAssemble, but it does. So I'm going to just reference the name of the translation file. It should be here under sources. So I can pull it from there. The other thing I need to do is tell DocAssemble to turn on the translation. So just referencing it here, there's no way to switch the languages. There's no way for it to say what language I'm using. So I want to do these things as well. I need to say that this interview is actually available in English and Spanish. So I'm going to add this code block here. These blocks don't matter anymore, the order that they happen in. They just need to happen after the assembly line. Because otherwise, because you know how DocAssembly works, top to bottom, we have a default value for these variables. I don't want the default value to override my custom one. So I need to put this a bit lower in the file. And I'll just put it after the metadata here. Let's see. I'm just thinking about this. I guess every interview that includes this interview is not going to be translated. So I'm actually going to change the file that this goes into from this file here can be included in multiple files. I want to do this in the actual file people run, now that I think about it. But this had to be first or anything else. Okay, so put after this metadata. So this is a assembly line specific variable that helps control some of the nice ways that we've built to switch between different languages. It's not a built-in docassemble feature. I think because I am turning, let me see. I don't have to customize this. I think this is maybe automatic. I think as long as I've listed more than one language here, that's enough to turn on translation. Let's take a little peek and see if I'm remembering right. Yep, so I have this little drop down here, just change languages. And that's there because all I had to do was add this AL interview languages equals and then list the two languages. So that is correct. Okay, so you can see when I switch the language, it is translated most of the terms. There are some things that aren't translated. Like this is a code block here, so I need to have a different way to translate that if I want it to be in Spanish. And this is a really important step. I want to actually, once I've gotten back the language translation file from the human reviewer, I still need to run the interview to know that it's actually correct. I do see a couple of things here. Like we have this green words is marked as being a clickable term, but it actually isn't clickable. And I'm not sure why yet, but we can try to figure that out. It's the kind of thing I want to know when I'm running it to see. Okay. Let's just check. I am in Spanish, but this page apparently wasn't part of the translation at all. Seeing things mostly still in English here to figure out why that is, but some things are in Spanish. I want to look kind of at the file and see if I can figure out why that is. It might be that these are all built-in questions to the assembly line that are translated, and the specific ones to the interview don't seem to be popping up as translated. So I'm going to have to figure out why that's happening. Might be an error in the translation file. So great, like the translation file was reviewed. It makes sense in its context, but obviously it's something that's going on with it here that's stopping us from being able to use it. So let's see. Okay. Well, that's something that's going to happen to you sometimes too. It could be any number of things. It could be that I have a problem here with the include order. It could be the translation file, something broke about yeah, I'm gonna have to take a look and see if I can figure out what's going on with it. All right, but let's see what it looks like here, just so you can go back to like our unbaked cake, what happened with it. You see here, we looked at our translation results for our interview. We see two files we can download. They correspond to the one that we sent to our human reviewer. And I can pop one open now for you to see what it looks like. You can see we don't have anything translated into Chinese yet. So 100% of the row of the files was untranslated. And for Spanish, we have lots of things that are translated already. And we just have a few things that were translated by the AI. And these are things that are already translated upstream in our assembly line interview. These are obviously ones that are specifically, that are new in this case. They're not really untranslated. We need to backport these. And these are ones that are specific to the interview that I just ran. You can also see that by looking at the file name in column A. This can be really helpful to use to communicate with your translator. They're going to want to know, well, how many words is it? If I just took this translated file and I told them the total word count, well, first of all, you have to be careful about selecting the right column, right? It's just this, I guess column G would be safest to use. Or I can filter here now by like, what are the highlighted rows? But what's going to happen is that sometimes there's code you don't want the translator to translate. Every good translator I've worked with will not charge you to like skip over a word. They're going to just say that's not part of our cost and they won't charge you for it. So this number here that's quoted on this page has done the math for you. It subtracts the syntax highlighted words from the word count. This is more to give you an idea of how good is my translation coverage than anything else. And this again is kind of just give you an idea, but this number is the one you're going to communicate to the translator. You're not going to do your own word count by looking at the file, and don't let them do it either because they will probably make a mistake.
Quinten, Michelle asked a question in the chat a few minutes ago. Is it enough to list the language codes to turn on translation in vanilla DocAssemble, or only if we're using the assembly line? I'm not sure if I fully understand that, but I hope you do.
It doesn't do anything in normal assembly line. You have to actually change the language of the interview. So there has to be some code that you hook into that tells DocAssemble to run the set language function. And I can just pull it up so it's on the documentation too. A bit off topic for us here, but for people who are looking at this in the future, but good context for folks who are thinking about translating their interviews. So this is what actually changes the interview's language. And it changes all of the language of the interview. So like you'll see here, the playground terms are also translated. Sorry, all of these built-in system menu phrases are translated now as well. And that's just by calling set language. And you give set language a 2-letter code that corresponds to your language that you want it to be run as. And you just have to be consistent. You don't literally need to use a language code that relates to the exact language. We decided to do this, for example, we wanted to have an interview in traditional and simplified Chinese, which is the written language Chinese. And there isn't a language code for those two because I think the language codes generally relate to spoken languages, which would be like Mandarin and Cantonese. And we didn't want to represent that because that's not actually what was happening. We were just the written language. So for that, we just added a dash. That's fine. You just have to use it consistently all the way through. And one of the things that you can do with DocAssemble's language features is that you can translate those system phrases that are on the drop-down menu here. You reference that in the inside your configuration, which I won't show you because it has API keys and other secrets in it. All right. I'm very intrigued to see this problem here. So this, as far as I know, should work. We could try something. We could try just for the recording here. I could figure this out later. We could try the language file I just made, because I know that wasn't messed around with by accident in any way. So let me go back to the interview. It won't be doing double duty for me anymore, but it's still good enough. And what was it? Demand letter was the file I just made. Okay, so another chance to see it. I'm going to go back to sources. I'm going to add now that file from my downloads. I need to reference it here at the top. And this is plural, right? Yeah. And I put that in there. And then I need, after my assembly line include, doesn't really matter where, so could put it closer if I want to. I need to put in that code block. AL interview languages. It's expecting a list of strings that equal language codes. Always include English as one of those codes, because it's looking for at least two. And what did I do here wrong? Okay, this is good because the AI has created a bug in the translation, so we have to fix that. That's a good thing to do because that's a common thing that happens when you use a human translator, which you're going to still probably be doing. So we have a tool that helps you find and fix those bugs that I can show you as well. All right, so let me go back to the dashboard here. I'm going to go to validate translation files this time instead of prepare. I'll take my translation file. Whether it's a human or a AI doing the translation, you're going to sometimes have errors that they make. So this catches things that are definitely errors, and a very small number of things that I found are sometimes errors. Uh, this was the big one I looked for, which is maybe you mean to have a pound symbol at the beginning of the line, but I was finding, at least in one translation that I got back from the translator, they had a space before a lot of them. So then I was just having a weird floating pound symbol rather than a heading. That was the proper level. So something there that is possible. Let's look at row 9 and just see, is it actually true? Is there like a floating pound symbol on row 9? And this was not part of the AI translation, so I'm going to ignore it because it was already translated by a person manually. So now I'm going to look at row 81 here and see if I can find anything obviously wrong. And then if not, I'm going to look closer at the error message to understand what it thinks was wrong. Okay. So you can see what happened here. I used the dumb AI and it decided to translate the word if into C. So that's a big problem. I'm going to actually rerun. It's gotten a lot of them right, but some of them it hasn't. Let's just see if there's more mistakes in this block and if it's worth fixing them manually. All right, well, that's that row. And then we have another error on row 355. I'm guessing it's the same problem where it's used the word C to replace if, and it shouldn't have, because that's a Python keyword that's not meant to be translated. Our instructions say that, but still it is something that could happen incorrectly. I'm going to do like a little search and replace, and just since it's just those two errors, that might not be a problem. Just going to make a new file here and just look for the exact word C and then replace it with if. And maybe in this editor, it's a little easier to see what's happening than squished into the Excel.
It makes sense to do like the percent sign space C, just so you don't get C used properly somewhere else.
Sometimes it was used at the end of a line.
Yeah.
But good point. I probably did do it more than I was supposed to. So why don't I start with replacing just those, like you said, and then I'll look at the other ones manually. Really good point. Because you're right, sometimes it could be used appropriately. Here we go. See, like that one does need to get replaced with if, but I can look at them one at a time. Oops, didn't replace all. So it's interesting, right? Like the AI got it right most of the time, but it messed it up a couple of times here. And I can tell you that is fewer errors than I've gotten from my human translators so far. Okay, we next go to line 355, I think. Let's double check. Yep. I'm going to do the same thing. It's just so much easier to read it when it's not squished into the little box here. So let's take it back into a different, bigger editor with a bigger viewport here. And this just looks totally kind of wrong here, huh? There's a missing if statement. So it's just dropped part of the phrase in the translation. But it does look like that's the only thing that's wrong. So I did use the cheapest AI. I think you probably get fewer problems if you don't do that. Just realizing here as well that it's copied the quote symbol. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to that previous row to make sure I didn't like leave that in there by mistake. So it's row 81. I think there's a shortcut for that. I can't remember to jump to a row. Okay, I'm just making sure there's not like a quote at either end of this. And it looks like it adds it for you magically when you use Excel, but also it magically deletes it. So I'm good as far as I can tell. All right. Now I've just saved that. I'm going to try running it through this checker again. And where is that saved? My downloads, I believe. Still an error here. Okay, so we have 4 was replaced with para. So I got to fix that. Same row that I'm on here, right? Not that one is fine. This one is not, though. And I noticed another error. We have N. should be in. But only some of them are wrong. Okay. So yeah, this is what happens. It's not perfect, but I certainly have seen humans make mistakes like that. And I do think I had fewer mistakes when I used the more expensive AI. So that's important to consider. I know we probably can't go too much longer here.
No, but it's super useful to see the process.
Okay, so we have another problem here. This one maybe has to do with smart quotes getting in there somehow. Looks like it's replaced my single quotes with double quotes. And I'm thinking through, is there any reason why those wouldn't be? I probably still have to do them. Oops. Probably should still do them one at a time though. So there's different ways I could go about this, right? Like I don't have to do this manually. I could say with a different AI tool, um, can you fix this? A dumber AI got it wrong. And here's exactly what it did wrong. Or I could try running it again with a smarter model. There's different options that I could take to make it work better. So now if there's ever like 3 in a row, I know that should just be 2 in a row. It seems like there are a couple places where that happened. And then I think this quote at the beginning is kind of throwing off the syntax highlighting. Let's see. It doesn't know that this is Mako syntax. What if I tell it is? That could help me find errors as well. Looks good now. Put that back in here. Row. Hold on. What row was this supposed to be? 81. There we go. Okay, so what's really nice about using this dashboard tool that let you check for mistakes is that it will check all of the rows. If you try to just go through the interview and click one by one, you will get only one error at a time, which is very frustrating. It takes forever. Still a different problem here. The E here. If there's ever... Okay, I think that we could search for that relatively easily and see. And again, faster might be to like say, hey, this is probably not supposed to be translated, or at least there's some places where it did it wrong. Can you check each of them? I could do that with an AI if I wanted to. Because you probably want to check for those kind of syntax errors before you give it to the human to review. But on the other hand, sometimes they won't. They'll introduce their own new errors when they're reviewing it. Okay, so wrong place here. Row 81. Making sure that. Okay, let's try one more time. And if all we get is the heading, nope, something else is wrong. All right, it's translated all these Python control words into Spanish. So if I didn't know at least a little bit of the language, I would just maybe like add that into my custom instructions and tell it to start over, because your time is probably worth more than a few pennies of, or a few fractions of a penny of the AI's time. But this is good for you to see. It's actually pretty good out of like, how many rows was it? 1,000 rows. We had 2 rows that had errors. Great. We only have a warning now. This was already there. It's been already checked by you, and it's already in all of our packages. So I'm confident that's not actually a problem. Now I'm going to go back to the data sources folder and upload my translation file. Go back here to run it. And you see like something that I added here that still needs to get fixed in that translation file, this little red line, but it doesn't seem like it's going to stop it from running. This seems to be a problem in our upstream translation package that we got to fix. Everything is translated here fine. So that other file seems to have an error. There wasn't a process problem, but I forgot a step or something like that.
The navigation isn't translated. Is that expected?
It is. So great. That's a good segue. That is one of the things you need to translate using the YAML file. You cannot translate it in the translation spreadsheet. So you need something like this here. So we're going to find our section code. We can add our own Spanish language version of that here. And we just got to make sure these things line up. So this is a different way to translate interview files. I don't recommend that you do this as your main translation method. You can add like a language equals whatever your 2-letter language code is, 1 by 1 per block. That gets really hard to maintain because you have 2 different blocks that do the same thing. But sometimes that is the best way. Like maybe to translate this phrase here, write a 93A demand letter. I might have wanted to do that. That is a way to get that language to get translated. But I don't have to do that. And to get that into this translation spreadsheet, this is actually something we need to change in the Weaver. So it does this out of the box for folks. You can use a data block instead. Here, change the language. Now that is updated as well. Let me show you one more thing that you might like to do. So if you would like, you might want to make on the very first page of your interview, at least a little bit more obvious way for someone to switch the language. And you can do that here by changing the pre block. So it's a little clunky, but let's say that I wanted to change this page here to show a little language switcher like right on the page. I can do that. I would need to copy this into my interview to override the default language because it's not in this file, it's in the baseline file. But let's do that. Doesn't really matter where, so I'm going to put it here just for speed. And then on this block, I can add the modifier to show the language codes. And you see now I have a switcher here that's right in line. That's a little easier to find than this drop-down menu. So that is another feature we have, and it is just this function here, get language list. This refers back to the current language and the list of languages that you already defined other places in your interview. So you can like just drop this into your interview files and it will work right away. Or you could put some conditional logic around it if you want. We just haven't changed. Usually you don't want that on every page because it takes up space. But it is maybe nice to use in the first page of the interview. So that is really all that it is. And again, like the big thing is like once you've done the translation, you still need to make sure it works. So you need to keep going through it. But I can see there's lots of questions on the chat. So anything else important that I should?
We've gotten to most of them. I've dropped
Okay.
one in the in Teams that seems better for later. And Michelle was just wondering if you can also use template blocks for translating stuff.
Yes, that is true. So if I wanted to translate, let's go back to that language for the short title of the interview. I could use a block here for that instead. Translation template block I think should work because I think it's gonna. This shouldn't change anything because I haven't translated it in my spreadsheet yet. But if this still works, then I know that it's a way that should work for translation. Can't remember if there's anything that demands that is a string rather than a template block. Seems like it works. So that is a way to do it. The other thing you could do, option number 2, is to make it a data block. So it's like this variable name, interview short title. And then actually, would that work? I don't know if it works like that. Actually, now that I think about it, I don't know if we can put in one variable. It needs to be a list of items. Template block might be the right way to do it. No, that works too. So 2 ways to do it. I guess we could put that on the documentation page. I saw Matt's question about like adding into the instructions, don't translate Python keywords. It already says that, but you notice like it did 1,000 rows and it only made that mistake. in one of the rows. So that is just the nature of AI. It's not 100% controllable. It makes mistakes sometimes. We did use the cheapest, dumbest AI, the Nano version. I have heard that GPT-5 Nano, which is even cheaper than 4.1 Nano, is the equivalent of like the normal mode of 4.1. So we just need to upgrade it maybe to use the newest thing. And it might just make that mistake less often. But you could also just use the next smartest one. Or you could just have it try again with extra instructions if it happens to make that mistake. It is a bit annoying to do that fix manually. I will say I always spend a couple of hours fixing human translated text because they make plenty of these mistakes too. So I just budget that into the time when I'm doing translations.
Okay. Well, I think that's our time. Quinten, thanks so much for walking us through this. And it'll be a big help to our volunteers as they embark on more interview translations.
All right. Thank you to future volunteers who might see
Yeah.
this. All right.
Bye, y'all. Have a great rest of your
Yeah.
week.